Bright moments.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
What an incredible day. This has been a wonderful, wonderful project that is finally come to fruition. I'm just so full of emotion. I thank each and every one of you for coming, for being here. It's because of all of you that we've been able to do this project. So I applaud you. I thank you. I thank you all for believing in us and believing that the project that we had was a worthy project and that you believed that I could bring it to fruition. Before we go any further, though, I would really like to thank Robert Payne. Richmond Jazz Society, and my compadre in all things. It's because of him that we were able to pull this project together. I thank him for his patience, for keeping the project on track, for telling me, no, BJ, you cannot put a hot air balloon in VAJAZZ parking lot today. Thank you, Robert. Robert did so much work helping me at going to the libraries, on Ancestry.com, looking at the terrible writing on all of the birth certificates and death certificates and marriage certificates, and it's been incredible time researching for this project. I have learned so much. I could not understand why I've never heard some of this information before. And I call myself knowing jazz. I've been in jazz for 30 years. And you know, some of these folks, it's just an incredible story. So I hope you will get an opportunity to really, really go through the exhibition. We do have catalogs for sale because it's too much information to remember. So hopefully you will be able to do that. Make sure you fill out a survey because I would like to know how you enjoyed the program and what I could possibly do better. And I've had people ask, so what's going to happen? This project is going on until April of 2018. What's going to happen afterwards? And that's a good question because this is too much information to just put in a box somewhere. So as our auntie will say, time will tell. So before we go any further, I have some people you know I have to thank. Jillian Columbus, our exhibition designer. We are such a great team, Jillian and Robert. I mean, Jillian was so wonderful. I could tell her, Jillian, I'm thinking about this, and then in a few minutes, how about this? And that's it. I'm serious. This woman had just the vision and to show the colors and thank you, Plunky. The movement that you see with the exhibition. People will come in, well, it looks like notes. Are these notes to a song? Yeah, if you wanted to be. But thank you, Jillian, for all your work. And I know it was wordy, and we were trying to not to say too much. Words are good. Words are good. So thank you guys for that. I have to thank the sponsors at this time. I was hoping that Jill McCormick would be here from the Cabell Foundation, but the Cabell Foundation really stepped out and a vote of confidence for us when this was just an idea, and to say, yes, you can do it. And I said, yes, we can, and yes, we did. Yeah. So Jill is not here, but I would like to thank Jill McCormick for her just caring about what we were trying to do and recognizing that Richmond and Virginia did play an exciting and important role in the development of jazz as an American art form. So I say thank you for that. I'd also like to thank the Virginia Commission for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. You know, David Barringer is here. Thank you so much for your support and for guiding me. The Inclusive Edge, they have been on the ground helping me, keeping me sane, giving me champagne when I need to calm down. Bank of America, to our media sponsors, NBC 12, WCVE 88.9, Richmond Free Press. I thank all of them as well, because what's the point of doing this if you can't get the word out and let people know what this incredible event is about? So before I go any further, I would like to bring Paul and Cheatham with Dominion Energy. Would you come and say a few words for us?
Thank you, BJ. And I think our musicians tonight also deserve a round of applause. Someone once said that jazz music doesn't have an end date, and that, I think, cannot be more true. But one thing jazz music has is a beginning, and that's why we're here tonight. Dominion Energy is thrilled to partner with the Richmond Jazz Society in support of the opening night of Virginia Jazz, the early years. Dominion Energy has been a proud supporter of jazz music and of the Valentine for quite some time. So the combination of jazz and history really makes this exhibit a perfect fit for us. Not everyone realizes the major accomplishments and contributions Virginians have played in making jazz music what it is today, and we're excited to be telling that part of the story here. One other thing I should say is thank you to the Jazz Society for helping to curate the Jazz Cafe at the BMFA. Thank you for that. But thank you all for being here tonight to open this great exhibit and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a special thanks to the Valentine. I'm telling you, this has been an incredible venue. I didn't want for anything. Everything I needed. I need this, I need that. Okay, BJ, it's all right. Don't worry about it. You know, we'll help you. But the Valentine curators and staff and executive director, everybody just took me by the hand and said, I know this is new for you, but we can do it together. So we're here, and I need to thank you so much. I'd like to ask Meg Hughes to come. Please, if you would say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Meg Hughes. I'm the curator of archives here at the Valentine, and I'd like to welcome you all to the museum for the opening night of Virginia Jazz, the early years. I know this project has been a dream, really, for the Jazz Society for many years, and we're really happy to be a small part in helping to make it a reality. Here at the Valentine, we're all about partnerships. We work with everybody we can, and we know that we have strengths and resources, and so does everyone else in town, and we build on those. So in this case, we had a gallery. The Jazz Society had the knowledge. Fast forward a year, and we have this fantastic exhibition that explores our state's really rich tradition of innovation and excellence in jazz. And so while you're here tonight enjoying Virginia Jazz, please be sure to explore the rest of the museum on this level and the level above. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Mr. Bill Martin, it's your turn. Come on. And helping this dream come true. I am shaking. I am so still excited, and I'm just thrilled, and thank you so much. I have something for you.
For the staff.
For the staff. For the museum.
But the fact of the matter is that the real toast this evening should go to BJ and Robert.
Yeah.
To you and to the music and love you've created in this community, and so to BJ and Robert.
Thank you. Right moments. Thank you. And now for the man of the hour. I am thrilled to introduce to you one of the founders of Richmond Jazz Society. I'm going to tell it, 38 years ago, there was an article in the paper, a little small article looking for anyone interested in starting a forum for jazz. And we met, huge crowd, but when it came down to, okay, so who's going to write the bylaws? Numbers went down. Who's going to help with the articles of incorporation? Who's going to work on the mission statement? And it dwindled down. I think it ended up being about 8 or 9 of us. And some of the founders are here today. I am so thrilled. Thank you so much to the board members and some of the founders who are here, Will Lowe and Nelson Lawson. And Will Lowe. Nelson Lawson. And the person who put that article in the paper, J. Plunky Branch. Plunky's organization, Branches of the Arts, they were like an umbrella organization. We used to call him Doc behind his back. Because he was like our father. He was the one that taught us about nonprofit organizations and becoming a 501c3 tax-exempt organization and integrity and what you have to do and the education part. I can't thank him enough. And it is so very fitting that he be our speaker this evening. Yes. So please join me in welcoming J. Plunky Branch.
Thank you, BJ and Robert. They might have called me Doc. I called her baby all the time. Those of you who know me know I can speak forever, and I'll try not to do that tonight. I also usually improvise, just like I do on the saxophone, but tonight you get teleprompter funk. Because I wrote these comments out for this very august crowd and very meaningful evening. Jazz is America's musical gift to the world. It's an art form that is a hybrid, a kinetic blending of African American blues, classical music instruments, and soulful improvisation. It is a melding of mental and technical study, emotional and artistic risk-taking, and social edification and entertainment. Jazz is the musical playground where blues players get more and more dexterous with their soloing, and where classically trained musicians improvised, get more emotional and audience-oriented. Jazz has evolved and oscillates around these musical middle grounds. Now, there are many ways to tell the story of jazz. We could use its genres and styles, the major players and their influences, or the places and venues. The history of jazz begins in New Orleans. That jazz music originated in New Orleans around the turn of the 20th century was appropriate, if not preordained. New Orleans was a crossroads of American, French, Spanish, Caribbean, and African cultures. Located at the mouth of the Mississippi River, the city was a major seaport for slave trade and the import-export of all manner of products. Black music flourished in New Orleans because of its early settlers, the French and the Spanish, didn't forbid the African drums in their colonies, and they more openly mixed with African and Caribbean natives than did the more puritanical and hypocritical British. This created a Creole culture consisting of equal parts West Indian, African, Spanish, or French. In this melting pot, the gumbo of jazz was cooked. The blues of the slaves, the classical music of the Europeans, the rhythms of the Afro-Caribbeans mixed on Congo Square, on the boat docks, in the parlor parties of the well-to-do, in the bawdy houses and at the funerals, on stride pianos, banjos, and in brass bands. Jazz was born in New Orleans, traveled up the river to St. Louis, Memphis, and Chicago, and eventually to New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Richmond, Virginia. Along the way, picking up adherents, different styles, and fans, while becoming the popular music of America by the 1920s. The early popularity of jazz depended on lots of people, places, societal quirks, the press, and two new media, radio and records. Jazz is egalitarian, and at the same time it has been propelled by strong personalities, virtuosos, band leaders, and stars. The cities and specific venues were important to the development of the various styles of jazz. Societal accidents and oddities such as red light districts, prohibition, segregation, wars, and economic ups and downs are germane to the history of jazz, but the inventions of radio and records were perhaps the most important media for propelling the popularity of music in general and jazz in particular. Now, we may not know how Johnson's happy pals came to experience jazz, or what motivated them to pursue the music. They may have simply been trying to get some gigs, make some money, and have fun. It may have been to strive for the ultimate in musicianship and to create art. But we do know that jazz is conducive to and depends on all those motivations and more. Much of jazz history is oral history, the stuff of legends. Jazz is based on oral history, history that is heard. Recordings have played an extremely important role in the development and study of jazz. Phonograph records document the sounds, the techniques, the styles of the music. And critics, publications, and sales charts help document the impact of the music on popular culture. Today, with this exhibit, we celebrate the impact jazz has had on Virginia and how much Virginians have impacted the music. Now, I have personal connections to this exhibit and to the Richmond Jazz Society. First of all, the Jazz Society began officially in my dining room with 8 hearty souls to set upon this journey. And I don't think any of us knew that 38 years later, we'd be in places like this and impacting our community the way it has. I'm also connected to this exhibit because I'm really standing here in the place of Dawthorne Kirk. She was supposed to be this speaker. She was Rahsaan Roland Kirk's wife, and I met Rahsaan and she in San Francisco many, many years ago. So I'm connected to this exhibit in that I'm standing in the place of someone much greater than I who should be speaking to you. Rahsaan taught me how to circle a breeze. Rahsaan was a blind musician who could play 3 saxophones at once, and I'm still struggling to learn how to play. There are people on the list that impact us all. Ella Fitzgerald and Bill Bojangles Robinson, Pearl Bailey, Ruth Brown, they're all big stars. But there are lots of people on the list who maybe are lesser stars, but whom I came in contact with. I have personal recollections and relationships with some of the people on the list. First and foremost, Joe Kennedy. Yes. Joe Kennedy, Nelson will attest to. Joe Kennedy was our high school band instructor. And let me pause and say, all of our music teachers back in those days were musicians first, jazz musicians second, and perhaps teachers third. I have to mention some of them by name. My very first music teacher was Johnny Payton. Johnny Payton was followed by Dave Williams, Royal Singleton, Mr. Grant, I don't remember his first name. Sam Grant. George Poochie Ross was not my teacher, but I mentioned him in the context, and Tuscan Jasper. These were all black music teachers in Richmond Public Schools. And they gave us a wonderful foundation, and they moonlighted at night, many of them playing jazz music. Johnny Payton eventually formed a big band called the Renaissance Big Band, and some of the players in that group are here tonight. And imagine this, my first music teacher hired me to play in his big band many years later. I'm sitting next to Dave Williams, my second music teacher, and Tuscan Jasper in the back of the trumpet section, and they would let me take solos. A couple of other people on that list. Weldon Irving, who's from Hampton, I met him in New York because we were on the same record label, Strata East Records. Weldon Irving was the music director for Nina Simone. He was a great lyricist and poet, in addition to being a musician. He wrote the words and wrote the music to the song To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. Also on that list out there is Pearl Bailey. I didn't meet Pearl Bailey, but I interacted with her in Lagos, Nigeria. I was there to do business. She was brought in by one of the beer companies to be an entertainer. And I'll just say this about the reception that they had. The Nigerians did not know how to act with an open buffet. And when Pearl Bailey got on stage, some of you may have seen her on TV, she was also always a sassy woman. And she got up there and told those Nigerians that they should be ashamed of themselves. She had come from this. Well, let me just end that story. They booed her off the stage. Another name on the list, Mr. Stu Gardner. Stu Gardner gave me the chance to, as he did with a number of musicians from this area. Stu Gardner was the music director for Bill Cosby. The legend has it that Bill Cosby met Stu Gardner while he was stationed at Fort Lee and would come to Richmond and come to a place called the Market Inn, and Stu Gardner was kind enough to let him sit in on drums, and he never forgot that. Also on the list is Don Smith and Lonnie Liston Smith, both of whom are from Richmond, both of whom I've had the pleasure of performing with. They've always been gracious. Reading Lonnie Liston Smith's history and the people that he played with means that he should be in that first level of stars from Virginia. Also, venues play an important part of this whole history. I mentioned the Market Inn. I never went to Market Inn. I think I was too young. I used to hear my parents talk about it. But the first jazz club I ever went to is a very little known place called Chez Indigo. It was a small jazz club on the second floor of a building, I think on 1st Street or 2nd Street. I don't remember which. I was a senior in high school, went to this club with a date, and it turned me on. I thought I was sophisticated and had graduated into adulthood going to this club. It was dark, the musicians were well dressed, and they played this fine music like we were hearing earlier tonight. Other clubs I'll mention. This is a small place called Ovuti's on Broad Street, you may remember. The Cabana Club was a jazz club down on Main Street in the 1700 block of Main Street. It was run by a friend of mine, Teddy. He brought in Houston Pearson, and he booked my group Juju and listed me on the poster as Plunky Nikuk Bukni. Misspelled my name horribly. But that's not the worst. That's not the worst. I was once called Plunky Nagabadines. There was also a place called Cahiro Gallery, which was located in the home that I shared with Lou Harrison up the 3310 East Broad Street across from Chimborazo Park. And we would have jazz, but it was the first black art gallery in the state. Murray DePillas exhibited there as our opening exhibit. But we used to have jazz on Sundays. We used to call it Sundays at Sunset. Then there was a place on Chamberlain Avenue called the Richmond Jazz Society Club. Give them a round of applause. Another place was the Branches of the Arts Center on Clay Street. Another place was the Blues Alley, which was located at 6th and Marshall. Another place called Ellington's. And then last but certainly not least, the Hippodrome Theater, where I've had the opportunity to play in its latest incarnation. Brief bit about jazz. Jazz, as I said, is some music that's passed down. And one of the ways it's passed down is through families. Now, there are lots of famous jazz families. Ellis and Dolores Marsalis out of New Orleans. A lot of people don't know that Dolores Marsalis was a singer. They know Ellis Marsalis because he was based here at VCU for a while. His sons, Wynton Marsalis and Branford Marsalis and Jason Marsalis and Delphia are all famous young musicians. There's the family of Ornette Coleman and his son Donardo Coleman. Dewey Redman, who used to play with Ornette, his son Joshua Redman is very famous these days as a saxophonist. John Coltrane and Alice Coltrane gave birth to Ravi Coltrane. Dave Brubeck and his sons are our family. Nat and Cannonball Adley are our family. The Heath brothers, Jimmy, Tootie, and Percy. The Dorsey brothers, Jimmy and Tommy. The Brecker brothers, and so on. But there are also Richmond jazz families. We've talked about Lonnie Liston Smith and Don Smith. They have a brother, Ray Smith, who sang with the group the Jarmels, and they had the hit record, A Little Bit of Soul. Well, their father, Lonnie Smith, sang with the Harmonizing Four group for 40 years. Then one of the members in this exhibit, Jimmy Roots, is the father of Desiree Roots and her brothers, who are fantastic singers. James Gates and his father, Boo Gates, saxophonist. Hannah Lane and his son, Brandon Lane. Carl Lester and his son, Carl Lester Ill, who plays with the group Friends. And then Carl Lester Sr. is a jazz vocalist in town. He lives, I think, somewhere down south now. And then Carl has a son, Corey, who's a fantastic performer. Ashby Anderson, who runs a place called The Muse, who teaches young people jazz music. And his son, Drew Anderson, is now performing with Beyonce's sister up in New York and did a gig last weekend with Jay-Z. Lisa Burrs, the soprano singer, gave birth to Morgan Burrs, a young guitarist who's doing quite well. J. Plunky Branch, and my brother Moosey Branch, and then there's my son Jemiah Fire Branch, who's performing. So all of these are families through which the music is passed on for generations. There are other Richmond jazz giants, and I really shouldn't do this because I'm going to give a very abbreviated list of people that mean something to me, and there are a couple of people here that I'm going to be embarrassed that they're not on my list, but no, I love you all. But there's some Richmond jazz giants who haven't made the exhibit. I'm going to start off with Dr. Ralph Branch and Jim Branch, both of whom are not related to me. But Dr. Branch has led a jam session for about 30 years, and Jim Branch was a renowned jazz vocalist with the Renaissance Band, among others. I mentioned Dr. Weldon Hill, who shows us that you can be a great musician and also go on to great things academically. Bill McGee, trumpeter here in town, has started a jazz record label called 804 Jazz, and they're doing quite well in the smooth jazz realm. The group Friends, Rudy Faulkner and Lance Dickerson and Carl Lester. Another young piano player, Howard Bossall, B. Bossall, is doing quite well. I've mentioned Hannah Lane. I'd also mentioned Debo Dabney and Glenroy Bailey. I'd mentioned Lucy Kilpatrick, the Jazz Ladies, Johnny Houston. And then I would get to the VCU family. Dr. Murray DePillars, who was the dean of the School of the Arts, and because he was a jazz lover, he helped the Jazz Society sponsor some amazing concerts back then. People, renowned jazz artists being brought to town. And then he was followed by Doug Richards, who was the head of the jazz department, and currently Antonio Garcia. Then, I'm getting to the end, I mentioned some future prospects. One of them is a group called Future Prospects, young jazz musicians. I would mention Jose Palmier, a jazz guitarist, and Kyla Valdez. I've already mentioned Brandon Lane, who plays bass and trombone. There's a trumpeter, young trumpeter, Victor Haskins. I've mentioned Morgan Burrs, I've mentioned him again, Corey Lester, Drew Anderson, Jemiah Branch, and Allende Williams, who I just heard at the last Jazz Society meeting. So in recent decades, we've come to appreciate the importance of archiving jazz stories, artifacts, and recordings in a more formal way. Hence, this exhibit here at the Valentine Museum elevates the status of the history of jazz in this community and in the state. It is a significant and wonderful first step. The Richmond Jazz Society, Robert Payne, and the Valentine Museum should be applauded. And a very special recognition, shout out, and a bunch of accolades go out to B.J. Brown. If I were the Wizard of Oz or RVA, I would rank this exhibit as her thesis. And I would award B.J. Brown an engraved sheepskin, a symbolic gold record, and bestow upon her the title of Doctor of VA Jazzology. my opinion, universities, libraries, and museums should be the repositories of artifacts and archives of the works of our significant jazz musicians. That's a hint as what should happen to this exhibit. Of course, this means our artists must be more serious about preserving their own work. And perhaps exhibitions like this one will demonstrate to a next generation that such preservation work, even on one's own individual basis, can be worth doing. In today's world, most everything can be digitized and saved on disk or in a cloud, meaning the archival materials from a whole career can be stored in a relatively small space. And an artist's life work can be duplicated and made available in multiple venues and libraries or museums everywhere, or licensed and be accessible from anywhere. Jazz in Virginia can be visualized as a giant flowering tree with deep roots. Let's recognize and encourage and do all we can to inspire our next generation of jazz giants so one day they can be on display in an historic, uplifting exhibitions in distinguished places such as this. Let's do it.
Because you believed in us, you believed in this project. Plunky, thank you so much. Wonderful words. Yes. Do I get capping down? And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Take the time, please. Enjoy the exhibit. Get a catalog. If you're not a member of Jazz Society, we would love to have you in our Jazz Society family. Thank you again, Robert. No hot air balloon. And bright moments, and enjoy the rest of the evening. I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you again. Thank you.